Hey guys, the Wolf Den here, and today on this episode of Unboxing and Review, we'll be taking a look at the Space Marine Ironclad Dreadnought for games of Warhammer 40k. Sadly, this model is out of print, however, it is very much possible to pick one of these up on the secondary market or to kit bash your own. First, in this video, we'll be examining the lore around this powerful Dreadnought variant, as well as taking a look at its model history in our universe, before cracking the box open and seeing what's inside, and my overall thoughts on the completed model. So, without further ado, let's get into it. My sleep was troubled. I dreamt of the glorious Imperium, and the coils of shadow and malice that threatened to engulf it. Guide me to war, young one. I wish to cure my melancholy with dead traitors. Ancient Valoris. The Space Marine Dreadnought, an armored sarcophagus for a Space Marine hero who has fallen in battle, allowing them to fight again, has had numerous variations in both appearance and function throughout the Imperium of Man's vast history. From the mighty Contemptors and Leviathan Dreadnoughts of the Horus Heresy to the more modern Castaferum and Redemptor patterns of the late 41st millennium, these machines are an essential part of how the Space Marines wage war across the galaxy. In time, specialized variants of these impressive machines began to emerge, often necessitated by battlefield conditions or requirements often encountered by the Space Marines in the field as they engaged enemies uncounted. One such example of these variants is the Ironclad Dreadnought. The Ironclad Dreadnought is by far the most heavily armored dreadnought available to the forces of the Space Marines, outside of the near-extinct relics of the Horus Heresy. These combat walkers willingly sacrifice the ranged firepower of their brothers, and in return are granted increased levels of protection to their armored hulls thanks to additional layers of ceramite. This added protection allows them to excel in the task in which they were created for: the destruction of enemy bastions, fortified positions, fortresses, and bunkers. They are also equipped with a variety of close-range firepower in place of normal dreadnought weapon systems to deal with threats once the enemy's protective walls and bastions have been reduced to rubble. Ironclad Dreadnought's role are similar to ancient Terran battering rams. They are immense walls of armor and assault weapons that can tear apart both a rampaging Tyranid Carnifex and a squad of Chaos Space Marine Terminators with equal contempt for their heretical lives. Thanks to their increased levels of protection and armor, it is expected that these armored combat walkers lead assaults from the front, a task these ancient veterans relish, storming armored positions while their power armor-clad brothers move in their wake, destroying any survivors. These dreadnoughts are often piloted by the most aggressive, nearly rage-consumed of the chapter's ancients, putting their years of combat experience to use in the form of the destruction of the enemy's bastions and strongpoints to vent their ancient fury. Ironclad Dreadnoughts are armed with many weapon systems to accomplish their missions, including Power Fists, Hurricane Bolters, Dreadnought Chain Fists, and the dreaded Seismic Hammer, to name a few. These dreadnoughts have also been known to mount hunter-killer missiles on their hulls to deal with enemy vehicles, and ironclad assault launchers on their flanks, which allow them to deal with infantry while getting close to their true targets, enemy fortifications and bunkers. A famous example of an Ironclad Dreadnought is Brother Valoris of the Imperial Fist chapter. This mighty dreadnought in his time of service has broken over 200 siege lines and has been recorded for tearing open nearly 1,000 enemy bunkers. Due to the ancient rites and techniques required to build and maintain dreadnoughts, as well as their status as being near irreplaceable relics in the late 41st millennium, it has been noted that there are numerous variations of the same pattern or classification of Ironclad Dreadnought amongst the chapters loyal to the Emperor. One such variant is this version, seen here, which is called a Mark IV Ironclad Dreadnought. This model features a more streamlined framed and somewhat squatter appearance. Note the unique, almost angular and streamlined body frame, almost like a work of art. And notice the claw-like feet and toes, keeping it secure to the ground in its footing. This is also an Ironclad Dreadnought, very similar to the more traditional Castiferum pattern Dreadnought, with this pattern specifically being known as a Mark V Ironclad Dreadnought. Note its more common boxy appearance to its hull, the lack of claws on its feet, and more traditional coffin mounting plate in the front of the body rather than being the more ornate mounting found on the Mark IV. Though it should be noted, however, despite these aesthetic differences, both of these dreadnoughts are identified as being Ironclad Dreadnoughts, their purpose the same: to bring destruction and ruin to enemy fortifications. Now that we've briefly discussed the lore of the mighty Ironclad Dreadnought in the 40k universe, let's briefly take a look at this walker's history and model form in our universe, with its various releases by Games Workshop and Forge World. The Space Marine Ironclad Dreadnought has a relatively short model history in our world, especially in terms of the many varieties and forms of dreadnoughts that have been made by both Games Workshop and Forge World over the years for both the Space Marine and Chaos Space Marine model ranges. The Ironclad Dreadnought was first released in model form during 2004, which was, at the time, Warhammer 40k's 4th edition. This model takes the form of the all-resin Mark IV Ironclad Dreadnought released by Forge World. Alongside the Ironclad came a range of all-resin weapons as well, including this eagle-headed seismic hammer and Dreadnought Chain Fist, with the various plastic, metal, and resin Dreadnought weapons that had been released at this time, allowing the resin Mark IV Ironclad Dreadnought to be used in a variety of ways. Later, in 2009, which was during 5th edition of Warhammer 40k, the all-plastic and new Ironclad Dreadnought was released by Games Workshop. This model is different in its appearance, taking after the more traditional and boxy-looking patterns of dreadnoughts that had come before. This model also includes a full range of plastic weapons in the box, including the seismic hammer, Dreadnought Chain Fist, and Hurricane Bolter. And this model is also 100% compatible with the plastic, resin, and metal Dreadnought weapons that had been released before. Sadly, however, this Dreadnought kit was rendered out of production in 2023, along with many other firstborn Space Marine models, and it is sadly out of print and hard to come across new in the box without paying a hefty sum. However, it is decently common on secondary markets in built and painted form, and the option to kit bash a similar looking Dreadnought is an option as well. With that being said, I managed to snag one of the last ones that I could find sealed in the box, and it is this plastic model that I'll be showing off to all of you today in this review. So here we have the Ironclad Dreadnought still in its box, and what an awesome box cover it has, which features the Ironclad Dreadnought standing among some runes. I will never not love these diorama-style boxes. A quick look at the back of the packaging features another view of the Ironclad Dreadnought, this time featuring a few weapon profile shots, including the Hurricane Bolter, the Dreadnought Chain Fist, and Special Dreadnought Power Fist exclusive to this set, as well as the Seismic Hammer. You get quite a lot of weapons, bits, and accessories in this kit, which we'll be going over once the model is complete, which is one thing that I absolutely love about this kit. On the bottom of the box, you have a quick what to do with this model guide, which shows some other views of the model kit and the kit completed. with a large finished view of the Ironclad Dreadnought in the Ultramarines chapter color scheme front and center. Now with the box taken care of, let's take a look at the instructions for this kit. Next, we have the instructions for the Ironclad Dreadnought, which feature a really nice and glossy photo of the Ironclad Dreadnought in full color. Opening up the instruction booklet, we have a nice list of the contents, being the pictures of the two sprues, as well as the Dreadnought's base, which is really nice to include, as well as instructions on how to find a full-color painting guide online for this model kit. The instructions themselves are rather basic. There are no parts numbers on this model given its age. However, the pictures are large and very easy to follow for assembling your model, so there are no issues with struggling to figure out what is what or what goes where. The back of the instructions features a quick weapons and equipment guide featuring the Hurricane Bolter, the underslung Power Fist mounted Storm Bolter, the Dreadnought Chain Fist, the Mighty Seismic Hammer, the Dreadnought Underslung Melt-A-Gun and Heavy Flamer, and the Ironclad Dreadnought Power Fist. Though much like the Boss Snickrot instructions, which we had covered previously, the weapons here are unlabeled and it has a guide composed entirely of symbols, which isn't helpful in the slightest. But overall, the instructions for this kit are excellent and I have no complaints. Next, we have a quick look at the excellent older Space Marine vehicle transfer sheet. This waterslide decal sheet features tons of iconography for Space Marine vehicles, including the chapters of the Ultramarines, the Imperial Fists, the Salamanders, and strangely enough, the Raptors chapter, which I initially thought was the Raven Guard, but it is in fact the Raptors chapter, as well as tons of generic icons, symbols, numbers, iconography that would work on a wide variety of vehicles. This is what transfer sheets for models should be, and I wish Games Workshop would make them in this quality again. Moving on to the sprues, we have our first sprue here. There's something about these old school Games Workshop sprues from the early 2000s that were just so chunky, solid, and robust. They feel really nice to hold and to handle. We have the legs, chassis parts, and body parts, and a few of the smaller weapons and accessories, all of which are excellently detailed and molded to perfection. There are no parts numbers for this kit, however, putting this kit together is incredibly simple, so that's not a problem. Sprue number 2 is a bit more tightly packed than sprue number 1, featuring the rest of the weapon and accessory bits as well as the arms, Hurricane Bolter, Power Fist, and the Mighty Seismic Hammer. The sheer amount of the details on this kit are amazing and definitely reflects the quality of these old Dreadnought kits. Each one featuring a wide variety of bits and weapons which really allowed you to make your kit your own. Lastly but not least, we have our generic Space Marine Dreadnought base featuring tons of molded in detail, bullet holes, and shell casings. With the parts and the contents out of the way, let's take a look at the completed Ironclad Dreadnought. And here we have the completed Space Marine Ironclad Dreadnought. This model is absolutely packed with details from foot to smokestack. Doing a turnaround here really shows off all the small parts and details, and I haven't even really added any extra decoration to the model. I appreciate that the hull design for the Ironclad is unique among all the plastic Dreadnoughts, despite them sharing similar parts and accessories. The arms, much like most Dreadnought kits used to be, are movable once the kit is complete. so you can change poses if you like. And of course, you can remove the weapon arms like so, as each weapon arm uses the standard Dreadnought arm connection port and socket, which used to be pretty much universal between almost all of Games Workshop's Dreadnought models over the years, including the plastic, metal, and resin Dreadnought models, released by both Games Workshop and Forge World. Now, let's take a brief look at the weapons and equipment that this model comes with. The first of these weapons is the impressive Ironclad Dreadnought Power Fist. Looking a bit more industrial than the normal Power Fist for Dreadnoughts, and under it you have a choice of mounting heavy weapons. I chose the underslung Stormbolter. Next, we have the Ironclad Dreadnought Seismic Hammer. This one is different from the Forge World eagle-headed style. There's even a point of articulation at the elbow, so you can pivot this weapon up or down once the build is complete. Next up is the Dreadnought Chain Fist, looking very similar to the chain fists found on the Reaver Titan. You have a choice of underslung weapons for this one as well, and I chose to use the Meltagun for a bit more power. We have the Hurricane Bolter, on which I've put a purity seal to add a bit more detail. It's a very solid yet simple design for a weapon, and would look great on a Dreadnought focusing on firepower. You can use the weapons in any combination that you like, as they all use the universal peg system, all without magnets, which is wonderful as it offers the versatility of magnets, but none of the stress of installing them. As for the accessories, we have a smoke launcher, a banner topper, which would look great either on a relic or venerable Dreadnought, or as an objective marker or decoration. You get 2 Hunter-Killer missiles in this kit, which are housed in these fancy coverings, and these fit on the top of the chassis. You also get a searchlight, which I've temporarily misplaced, but it's the standard Marine searchlight that comes with most Space Marine vehicle kits. You get a pair of heavy flamers as well, which can be added on the underside of the weapons for a bit more firepower, or are useful as extra bits for conversions or to go into your bits box. You get an extra Dreadnought sarcophagus cover as well. And last but not least, you also get 2 Ironclad assault launchers, which can be placed on the Dreadnought's sides for extra protection during engagements or firefights. So overall, this kit comes with so many accessories and weapons, it's actually incredible. It's one of the things that I love about these old Dreadnought kits, is that you got so many parts and pieces per box that even if you solidly glued 2 weapon choices to your Dreadnought, you'd have more than enough for other models and Dreadnoughts in your collection, and to go into your bits box as well for extra part or conversion material. Now with the weapons and equipment out of the way, let's go over some brief size comparisons. So for our first size comparison, we have the Ironclad Dreadnought compared to a Firstborn Space Marine of the current Tactical Squad kit. As you can see, it scales excellently with the older Firstborn models. However, with the newer Primaris minis, you may need to add more basing material to make it bigger in stature. Next, we have a comparison with one of the older plastic Terminators. Again, the size and bulk is nice here of the Dreadnought, and it fits very well scale-wise, even without its base. Here we have a quick size check between an older plastic Cataphractii Terminator and the Ironclad Dreadnought. Even the larger Cataphractii armor is still small compared to the Ironclad Dreadnought itself, and they look really good together, especially if you wanted to use this plastic Dreadnought for heresy conversion. And finally, we have a look at the Ironclad Dreadnought compared to the plastic Venerable Dreadnought. Both Dreadnoughts look great next to each other, and they scale very well together even without their bases. You can see here how if we simply remove the arms for both dreadnoughts, each chassis is basically universal, allowing you to really mix and match and make custom dreadnoughts for whatever army project you want to work on, thanks to the universal connection system. If you wanted to run this Ironclad Dreadnought as a venerable one that looks a bit different, you certainly could to add a bit more personality to your models on the table. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have a comparison between the Ironclad Dreadnought and the standard Space Marine Rhino. The Rhino is naturally going to be much larger, being an armored transport, but the scaling of these older kits was really on point for the most part, and they really look great next to each other. Now that we've gone through the size comparisons, I'd like to sum up my overall thoughts on the Space Marine Ironclad Dreadnought kit. Category 1, Build. I'm going to give the Ironclad Dreadnought a 4.5 out of 5. The build of the Ironclad Dreadnought is super simple and very enjoyable, a hallmark of these older plastic Dreadnought kits. It's a fun, relaxing build that goes together great without any major problems whatsoever. The fact that you can swap the weapons around without magnets or any additional modifications is also really nice, and I appreciate that you can really make these older dreadnoughts your own. Category 2, Looks. 4.5 out of 5. The Ironclad Dreadnought scores high here. There's numerous ways you can outfit your kit with all of the bits in the box, and you get tons of accessories and extra parts to really make your Dreadnought your own for your own projects, or you can easily match the box art for a painting project. The model has tons of details and looks super crisp even without primer or paint on it, which would make the Ironclad Dreadnought an amazing project to show off your painting skills. Material quality. 5 out of 5. Games Workshop's plastic for their model kits is nearly impossible to beat because it's so easy to cut, chop, sand, magnetize, glue, or to do anything you need to do with it, and makes this kit a joy to build. Accessories and decals. 5 out of 5. Again, the Dreadnought scores high here. The sheer number of accessories, decorative parts, extra weapons, and gear is a shining example of what Games Workshop kits used to be, to really allow you to model your own and to have tons of bits left over for your bits box. The decal sheet here is also excellent, allowing for tons of additional customization for your Dreadnought or to other minis in your collection as well. And lastly, instructions. 4 out of 5. The instructions here are excellent and simple. There is a lack of parts numbers, however, though the fact that this model only has a few sprues of easily identifiable pieces is more than okay. My only complaint here is that the weapons are unlabeled, which to someone who doesn't really know what they have, they would have no idea what weapon is which. But besides that, the instructions are very solid, with no mistakes, and make building a breeze. So would I recommend the Ironclad Dreadnought kit by Games Workshop? Absolutely. It's a fun, older kit that offers a great and relaxing building experience that rewards the builder with an awesome and extremely versatile model that can make numerous custom models, or the model right on the front of the box if you prefer, which offers a vast array of alternate parts and bits and accessories to go into your bits box or to use on other models in your collection, and is an absolute treat to build and paint. Would I recommend picking this model up for its exact aftermarket retail price? Probably not. While this model kit is fun, it's certainly not worth the hundreds of dollars it's going for currently on the aftermarket, but you can certainly pick one up used or to find bits from this kit to customize one of the other plastic dreadnoughts to make it an Ironclad. But overall, would I recommend picking up this kit if you have the opportunity to and to not pay a fortune for it? Absolutely. It's a shining example of what Games Workshop kits used to be, and I'd highly recommend to pick this kit up if you have the chance.